Good afternoon and welcome. This is another one of the Veteran Forum programs where we have had the honor and the privilege of reviewing the memories, if you will, of some of the guys and the gals who served in the different wars, starting back with World War II right now. Today is the 4th of September, 2008. We're at the studios here in Pittsfield of the Pittsfield Community Television Station, and today our guest is Bill Mickle. I'll have him introduce himself, and then we'll get into the show. Bill, if you will, introduce yourself and spell your last name for the record, please.
All right, my name is William Mickle. Last name is M-I-C-K-L-E. I'm actually Bill Mickle III. My dad was junior, and my grandfather was the first, and I have a son that's the fourth and a grandson that's the fifth. So there's a bunch of us.
Wow. Okay, all destined to do things. Well, what was your branch and when were you in the service, your years of active duty?
I was went in September of 1964, and in the U.S. Air Force, did basic training at Lackland Air Force Base.
What year?
1964.
Okay.
And I went through the 4 years and got out in 68, so I spent the four years in service.
And so that we can kind of have some fun growing up with you as you grew up, as you told before, way back when you were a fuzzy-faced little guy. Where were you born and when, and how was it growing up before you went into the service?
Well, it was actually, I had a pretty good childhood. I was born here in Pittsfield, and as I said, my father, William Mickle Jr. I was educated in the Pittsfield schools. I lived up off by the Pittsfield State Forest off of Churchill Street there for all my years. My father was a Pittsfield police officer for 30 years, and my mother was a hairdresser, and that's where I spent my time. There's probably people out there, if you're old enough, remember Mickle's Grove. That was a place up off Cascade Street, was a picnic area, and that's where I spent my youth, riding ponies and swimming and doing a little work, and it was pretty good I had a good life for a young fella.
Good, that's very good. Now, when you, shall we say, volunteered, you enlisted, was it just after school, high school, or were you getting the itch and decided now's the time to do something?
Well, it was right after high school. I graduated in June of 64, and I joined the Air Force in September of 64. Actually, I was still 17, and my dad had to sign for me to go in.
Yeah.
My mom wasn't too happy, but my father said it'd be good for him. Let him go.
Make a man of him.
Yeah.
I think. So, I hope. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's
where did you volunteer? What did you start in? Pittsfield, or Boston, New York?
No, right here. Signed right up here in Pittsfield, and went over to Albany for the induction type thing, and that's where we left from. But I signed up here.
When you left from there to go to where?
Well,
boot camp.
Boot camp was in Lackland Air Force Base, Texas.
Texas. Yeah.
In San Antonio. And we spent, I think it was 2 months. It was a 2-month training, just the typical basic training of running and people in your face yelling at you and push-ups and that type of thing. I think we all been there.
Oh, the welcoming committee.
That was it.
Yeah.
The welcoming committee.
Now, we've had all kinds of guys tell stories. They got there late at night, or they didn't get there till high noon. You did or did not have food. You all had to walk miles to get in there. How was it when you went in?
First, you got to remember, I joined the Air Force.
Oh.
You know, see, you go in the Air Force, and I got there late at night. They feed you, they give you a bunk to sleep in. You know, get up the next morning, and they actually fed you again. You know, I hear all these horror stories of the Marines and the guys going in and not getting any rest and making through things. It was, you know, they're in your face and yelling at you, but you know, they fed us, they gave us a place to sleep, and
but the
next day they run you through a line and throw clothes at you that don't fit you, and then they send you to a barracks and somebody else screams at you for a while, and they give you a bunk and they tell you to make it, and then they tear it up and tell you to make it again.
Yeah. Bounce a quarter. Let me a quarter first.
Yeah. So that was pretty much basic training. Was, I guess, you know, anybody's been there knows what that's all about.
On occasion, I've asked some of the guys before you, was it like the movies used to have us? You know, there was always a guy from Brooklyn, or some guy named Tex who came from Canada, and a couple of other guys from gosh knows where. Did you have a good group, or didn't you have to get to know them all?
Yeah, we had a very good group, and I went in with a buddy system with a friend of mine, Jerry Shaffery. We grew up together. We were best buddies. We still are, and So we went in on that buddy system, and so he was with me, and that was kind of, you're 17, 18 years old. That's kind of, you got a friend in the same barracks.
Did you stay together?
Yeah, we went together. We went through
Whoa.
basic training together. We went in the same barracks, same squad, same thing, and we had a good time. It was nice to have a real buddy with you there, and because you do meet a lot of other guys, and there's 2 or 3 guys in basic training, and I went through right through the first duty assignment, and then Vietnam.
Okay.
And then we got separated at that point, but yeah.
Now, here's one that always seems to get a giggle. After your, second or third day and you had your hair shaved off, they put you through the shots line. Mm-hmm. Do you have any good or bad memories about that?
Until you bring it up, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that now. They used to, at that time was when they first had those automatic guns.
Oh yeah. Bing.
Yeah, it wasn't when they stick the nail in. With these, they had the guns, but you'd walk through and they'd be on each side of you, and they'd be shooting, you'd be bouncing down the, and they get you with the typhoid and all the other stuff that you're supposed to get. And but yeah, when you bring it up, now I remember that was the electronic guns they shot you with.
Well, those are the good days. I'm taking.
I'm
your
sure
time.
you could tell me. You could tell me some of the ones you did.
It was almost like they show in the standard World War II movie. The corpsmen on either side, and as you said, you kind of shied away from this guy and he hit you, and you bumped into that one. Well, I think there were 4 or 5, and then at the end, they get you out in the drill field and you start doing exercise, and all of a sudden,
the arm don't
you
work.
couldn't move. Completely paralyzed. Right. And then they say, "Okay, gentlemen," and that's the only time they ever said "gentlemen." After that, it was, you can use your own words, But it was fun, and the best part about it, we talk about it now. You're going back, for me, 60 years? For you, 25 or 30 or 40?
About 40.
Yeah, like yesterday.
Yep.
And as you say, you start talking about it, and this little thing called the memory banks, this thing, all the little things that all of a sudden added to what you come up to today.
I'm sure if you could trigger probably a few other memories of things like that as you asked the
This is a family program. Okay. Now, anything special in boot camp that rings a bell, as you say?
No,
good, bad, or otherwise?
It wasn't. After about 2 or 3 weeks, they made me a squad leader, basically because I was 18 years old and in good shape and could do pretty much all the physical stuff pretty good. So they put me in charge of things like the thing you went around a obstacle course.
Oh, okay.
I only did it once, and then they put me in, helped me help people around, that type of thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I didn't get to do a whole lot of that. Do the running, firing when you have to do the basic shooting is at that point it was the conversion before the M16. The M16 was out, but we learned on the carbine and the M1. That was like everybody else did up until that point. Now because all the M16s were in Vietnam at that time, so we were learning on the carbine, and we didn't learn on the M16 until later on out of basic training. Okay,
what did you, if you will, opt for or qualify or be assigned to, whatever your primary MOS was? What was your specialty?
Well, when the little story before that was in basic training, when I got my orders, was to be a cook someplace. And I thought, well, they don't want me to cook. Come on, the Air Force got good food. Let's not ruin it, And I was a little upset, so I called home and talked to my daddy, and I said, "Hey, Dad, they're going to make me a cook, and I want to be a cop." And a political story here was if people out there remember Silvio Conti, who was well, him and my dad were fishing buddies, and so my dad called up Silvio, and next thing I know, I got a call into the commander's office, and he yelled at me quite profusely that he didn't like people that had political connections changing his orders. Oh. So then he says, "You are now a military policeman, but I'm going to send you to the armpit of the earth." And he says, "And you'll have to live with that," And I went, "Yes, sir." And out I went, thinking, "Oh, great," I created my own little nightmare here, So I got my orders, and it was to Alexandria, Louisiana, which is not a bad spot, actually, other than very hot and humid in the summertime, as everybody probably well understands what Louisiana is, and Alabama and all those places. And it was pretty hot and sometimes uncomfortable. But was it the armpit? Well, at 18, and there's 3 girls' colleges within walking distance of the base, didn't look like that was that bad to me at all.
Thank you, wherever you are. And you got paid for being there.
And I got paid for being there. So, you know, maybe where he thought was an armpit, we turned out to be a fairly decent tour of duty for the 2 years prior to going to Nam.
Now, what kind of training or any special training as far as being a cop, as you say, MP, what have you?
I didn't get any training prior to my duty station. It all came as when I got to the duty station. There was called a regular, they had a tech school and an OJT program on the job. And probably because I was giving orders versus taking them in that respect, the guy gave me, I was learning on OJT, on the jobs. So they stuck me out there and, you know, stuck a badge and a gun on me and said, go direct traffic and go
on the base?
Oh yeah, you know, and then go stand at the gates and wave traffic in, and that was pretty much how I got started with it.
Good.
So the first part actually I got stuck on was doing security walking a flight line. And one night I was in my barracks or in my room, and I got a knock on the door, and I opened the door. It was a sergeant. He says, you want to go on town patrol? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll do that. That sounds like fun. He goes, okay, report down, get your white hat, get dressed up, put your blues on, meet me at base police. I said, okay. So that's where I went. I said, this is pretty neat. Because I was in security, and most security guys didn't get to do that, especially with one stripe on their sleeve. And so at night we went out, and we happened to get in a fairly decent little brawl.
A decent brawl?
Well, decent little brawl. Yeah, if you want to call it that. It was, we got a call to one of the bars down in Alexandria. The police were called to it, but we were called to it also because they said there was probably
civilian police.
Yeah, civilian police, but they said there was military personnel involved, so they wanted the town patrol to show up. And so we pull up, and the sergeant, I got a staff sergeant with me, he says, now listen, he says, go in, you let me take care of, you know, just stand there, you know, look big and ugly, you know. Yes, sir, I can do that. So as we walk through the door, he gets hit in the face with a chair. Ooh. And the other city cops hadn't shown up yet, and I was still the only one left standing when it all ended.
Oh, did you have to convince people?
Yeah, well, yeah, I took a few licks, but at any rate, being as big and ugly as I was, and I did get a chance to get the upper hand, and more people came pretty quick, and but the moral of that story was I got taken out of security and I got stuck in law enforcement permanently. Oh. Which was kind of nice because that's where I wanted to be anyways.
So you didn't have to call Silvio and have him transfer you anymore?
Nope, I didn't have to worry about that either. It was a kind of one of those fateful situations that happened and put me in good light with somebody. And
good.
And so I got to get into the law enforcement program. Okay. And that's where I actually started getting more training.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you have to have a lot of legalistic sort of stuff, or just military control?
Mostly the military justice program. It was just the UCMJ,
okay,
and Uniform Military Code, and that's what a real basic course in Police 101, so to speak, as to what you can and can't do. And so I got to go some classes and some schooling for that, and most of it was, I should say, well, a lot of it was classroom. Then there was a lot of firearms and a lot of physical, combative training. You know, that's what all policemen go through, and you know, they had a very good program for that.
Now, you were already assigned to this now, so that we can have some kind of a track. Did you have a particular, I guess you'd call it military address, like the 5th Army, 2nd Division, or whatever?
So it was
that
was the 834th Security Police Squadron down in. At that particular time. Actually, it was called the Air Police Squadron. Okay. There was a transition during the Vietnam War that went from Air Police to Security Police and Security Forces now.
Okay, because we had a fellow on here a couple of months ago. He was a combat MP. Is there any differentiation between what you were doing or trained to do versus what he was doing?
In Vietnam, the difference was he was a combat MP. He was in the Army. He probably did wherever he was stationed. The ones I met were in downtown Saigon. They guarded the embassy. That was most of what the Army did. Okay. Army MPs, and they were usually at the Army military posts. But most of the MPs were in Saigon area. Being in the Air Police, what we were was technically security guards for the air base.
Okay. Equipment and personnel.
Yep, that was pretty much it. And stateside here, about 6 months before I went to Nam, maybe a little bit more than that, I went through like a 6-month training course that they were. I actually volunteered for it, but anyway, to go. Yeah, it was kind of neat. Again, you know, at 19 years old, you can get through anything. I hadn't shaved yet. It was a nice program. I had a good time with it. It was strenuous. It was challenging. Got involved with something. We ended up being the first Air Force combat trained unit to be sent to Vietnam and be sent at Tonsanut. That was again in early '66 or late '66. Mm-hmm. And when we got there, we got our special little patch that we were Alpha trained and all that nonsense. What happened actually was when there was air policemen getting killed over in Vietnam and they had no training. So what happened was the Air Force got this bright idea that, gee, we ought to train these guys before we send them over.
Good deal.
Yeah, somebody thought of that.
Way down the Pentagon, James.
Well, then they looked around and said, geez, you know, we're not a combat organization. We don't have anybody to train. So they got another bright idea and they cross-trained some Army Airborne Rangers into the Air Force to do the training. And these were pretty brutal guys. Yeah. But actually, you know, I got to know them and they're pretty good guys. But they were excellent trainers, and there was a group of us, about 50 at the end of it, that went through this specialized training with Army Airborne Rangers.
Over Nam or in the States?
No, actually stateside. We did it down in Alabama in the Kisatchie National Forest, which is a very, very close facsimile of what the Vietnam jungles are.
Jungle training.
Yeah. And
survival, living on the land.
You know, we did some of that, but that wasn't what our mission was going to be when we were there. So we got a very little bit, very small taste of the jungle and.
But in case you had to, you had it in your back pocket.
That was it. Yeah. Most of it was just firearms training and that type of thing.
Any special weapons? Or any?
Nothing special. The M16 and the M60. Okay. Those were the two basic, and then we carried a 38, and we also had the 12-gauge shotgun. Oh. And those are the four weapons that we carried in Vietnam.
What about the little? We used to have a little grease gun. It looked like a tube of grease, but
no. Well, that was K9 had those, but they were M16s. They just looked a little different.
Okay. Yeah. Now, before you left and have had all this training, did they perchance want to give you a promotion for being a good student and all that, or did you still go up as a PFC?
No, well, I went over as an Airman Second, which is just an E3. And that's all. I spent my whole year there. When I came back, they promoted me to E4, but I spent my year as an E3 in Vietnam.
Okay, now, I'm old-fashioned. What is an E4?
Well,
is that a staff sergeant?
Actually, yeah, no, that's actually a Airman First Class back then. Today, it's a senior airman. It's the three stripes.
Okay, all right.
They converted
I can talk to them.
Yeah, the three stripes was a Airman First, and then they went to a sergeant, and then they made it a senior airman. Those are the changes in the Air Force over the years that they did it. At the time, I was in during the conversion from Airman First to what they call the Buck Sergeant.
Okay.
Yeah.
That I can understand that.
Yeah, that's.
We used to have flintlocks too.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, okay, you get to Nam, and there have been all kinds of stories, good and bad. What was your specific duty, and how did you adapt for that year or so you were there?
I think you adapt slowly to any situation you're stuck in. You're there. You got to adapt to it, so you do. And I tell people I was there 365 days, and 362 of them were pretty. You know, I mean, we were on alert, but it was a job. You went to work, you came home, you went to work.
You didn't punch a time clock, though.
Yeah, we didn't punch a time clock. We were on alert a lot, and you didn't. You know, we were supposed to get one day off a week, but because of intelligence reports, sometimes you didn't. And that type of thing. But I got some great pictures of down in Saigon. I went down to the Saigon Zoo. Was gorgeous. It was like if you went into the Saigon Zoo was like there was not a war going on. Everything was gorgeous.
All isolated.
It was gorgeous. It was manicured. It was as good as anything, if not better than you would see here in the States. It was that beautiful. The flowers, everything. It was just amazing. And you know, Vietnam was a beautiful country, war-torn, and you know the beaches are pristine up there.
You got a chance to go dipping?
No, I didn't. I got to fly over one of them a couple times, but I never got to land on any of them.
Way down there. It's salty.
She ain't that pretty.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, it was just gorgeous. I got some pictures of this, and people would, you know, I'd send them back, and they'd say, he's in Vietnam. They can't believe it. You know,
now,
they're very pretty.
Talk about being pretty. What was your, I'll say, association with the Vietnamese people? And as far as, did you have double barracks with some of their soldiers and so forth?
Not barracks with them. We had our own compound. The Air Police had their own compound, our own guards. We had our own little, I'll say city, little town. We had our own airmen's club.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. We were at the time, the 377th Security Police Squadron was the largest police force in the world. It was just huge. Thompson Road Air Base is huge. As a matter of fact, that had more planes coming in and out of it than O'Hare. Wow. At that particular time in history. So it was a very big police squadron, and it was just a huge compound where we were. And I worked what they call the Alpha Sector, which is the perimeter of the base. And my shift was like 3 in the morning till noontime, you know.
And that was it?
That was it. That was what I came to work. Came to work at 3 in the morning and got off at noontime. I ate 2 meals, usually in a chow hall. They gave us C rations, but I usually give them to the Vietnamese kids. And actually the Vietnamese kids were the Vietnamese soldiers' kids who were. And some of the posts that we pulled posts with some of the Vietnamese. We didn't live with them, but we pulled some communitive or posts that were together. A couple perimeter posts, back gate posts, that type of thing. We'd work with them. Now, it was interesting because you had to try to learn their language, or at least try to communicate.
That was it, to get the buddy system to know that I'll watch you, you watch out for me.
Yeah, that's another funny story. I don't know if we got time for one of those, but
we got time.
The short version is we had a commander come out one night and told us we had intelligence that we might get hit tonight, so get ready, make sure everything's all pristine. Okay, I left. So I'm trying to talk to this Vietnamese sergeant that the intelligence and how it's coming in, and I'm kind of getting across to him, and I'm telling him to check his weapon. Well, his weapon was a World War II BAR, Browning automatic rifle, which you probably obviously know that. So, and I never fired one, to be honest with you, but as you probably know, it ain't rocket science either. So. But he didn't know how to fire it either, and that was the scary part because it was his weapon. So what happened was I had to show him, in fact, I had to find out myself first, again, how it worked, and then show him how to operate his own weapon. Yeah. So that's not a very encouraging factor to have.
Gets your attention.
Yeah, it does. It shows you that, why are we protecting people that don't want to protect themselves sometimes?
Or they don't know how.
Or don't know how. And that was... little disheartening things that happen. Well, you think you're there for a reason, and you are. There's no doubt in my mind they were there for a reason. But when you see the fact that, well, you can only help those can help themselves.
Yeah, but it's a completely different culture. Let's face it.
Totally different. You had to you have to be there to see it. I guess it's one of those things, and that's just one of the funny stories. That to me, it's funny now. It wasn't particularly back then, seeing it was only him and I at that particular bunker, but it's scary, You think about it later on, you go, my God, I was technically by myself.
Did you ever have any, I'll say, real scares as far as someone finally at G2 making sense that there was something going to happen rather than it may happen?
Well, actually, yeah, I was only there 3 weeks when the first attack occurred. It was in December 4th. 1966. It was one of the major attacks on Thompson Road Air Base. The scary part was I was only there 3 weeks and still wet behind the ears and scared out of my mind. Yeah. And I was laying in my bunk around midnight when the mortar started dropping in, and I yelled to one of the guys, quit slamming the doors, and he said, those aren't doors, those are mortars.
Yeah. That's the enemy knocking.
Get out of bed. So we ran, we picked up our weapons and from the armory, and they throw us in a pickup truck, and we head out toward the flight line, because that's where all the mortars are coming in, because obviously they want to destroy the planes.
Or the runways, yeah.
Yeah, the runways. So we got out there, and as we drove out the flight line and they told us to get out of the truck, I started out of the truck and the mortar hit pretty far away, but the concussion knocked me out of the truck and threw me up against a building, and I laid there for a minute wondering if all the thing was attached, and it was.
I can go home now.
Can I go now? The old adage we used to have was, when it started with, if you pulled off your buttons to get closer to the ground, when all that stuff was going on. But that was a frightful night. We ended up in a few firefights, and we went out to a location where a canine handler had lost his dog. The dog got killed. He was wounded. and he was pinned down, and I was in what they call a QRT, which is a quick reaction team, to go out and retrieve him, get him out of harm's way, because he was by himself. And so I was in part of that, going out to do that. And just a side note, I met this dog handler 2 years ago at a reunion.
Great.
Yeah, I never saw him after that day, and I didn't know it until I met him at a reunion.
When you did meet, if you will, did you have a good recognition right off the spot?
Oh, I knew his name, and I knew who he was, and I had seen it. He had a heck of a story. It was on History Channel. They had his part of his story on that particular battle was on History Channel one night, and he was interviewed. And I was watching it when it was happening, and I went, I know him, you know. And then at this reunion, he showed up, and we were actually talking about it between three or four other guys that had been there that night, and we were reminiscing, and he was sitting across the table. And he jumped up, "Were you one of the guys to come out and get me?"
Yeah.
I said, "Not by choice."
You owe me a beer.
Not by choice. So he told me to go. But that was kind of another, interesting thing that happens.
But those are the things that make it interesting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was
you can't write a script for something like that.
And it was very emotional.
Yeah, it bound to be.
Yeah.
I know we had I can't keep going back, but I was lucky, and I'll take a second of your time. I was invited as a guest of the VFW post down to Connecticut on this flight to Washington, the Warrior flight. And I was a official Connecticut Yankee replacement. And we got down there, and there were, I think, about 95 of us, plus the guides, one guy, a gal. Some couldn't move. They had chairs and wheelchairs and that. And we were down there by the monument, and some guy started playing taps. There were, maybe 65 or 70, kind of not lined up at attention, but just kind of a rotunda, and almost every one of them. And then my granddaughter was standing in back of me, and she said, "Why are those guys crying, Grandpa?" I said, "Big boys don't cry." I said, "Big boys don't, but old men with memories do." Even today, there's something, I don't know what it is, but as you said before, there's one or two words that, bing, you're back there where you don't want to be, no matter what the hell's going on. Oh, excuse me, folks. But anyway, this is your show, not mine.
No, that's quite right. It's
how long were you there? About a year?
Just a year.
Just a year?
Just a year. Left and went over in September and came back in September.
And you weren't extended or anything like the poor guys are getting nailed today?
Nope. I had the opportunity to. I had no desire to stay there any longer than I had to.
Smart. Smart. There are other places to see.
Well, I was a country boy, and I just wanted to go home, like pretty much every other GI who did at the time.
That's right. That's right. Now, going home, when you did get home, what kind of a reception did you get? Was there a band playing and all that, or you just kind of walk in, "Mom, I'm here, what's for supper?"
That's pretty much it. Came home, my now wife and my sister met me at the airport, and that was pretty much it. There was nobody there. Nobody was waiting to give me the hug and a kiss other than them.
But that's all you needed.
That was, at the time, it's all you wanted, just to get home.
That's right.
Just to step on the soil. And but I never experienced what I saw and what some of the guys had told me about being spit on and
guys
guys coming back over in San Francisco. I came in at San Francisco, was in uniform, was later at night, so obviously they probably weren't out there, and I didn't run into any of that type of problem there at all. And then when I came home here, again, no reception by other than the family, but I did get and I still have a certificate from then Mayor Butler.
Charlie,
just thanking me for
your service.
The service, and that was it. That was kind of nice. I got and I still have that, and I think all the guys from Pittsfield that came home got that.
It's a well done, a pat in the back.
Yeah. We, that's all. There was no, like I said, today we try to do a little bit more. I'm
like the deal that you and Roseanne are setting up there. We'll get to that in a minute, I think. When you did get home, what did you do? Did you go right back to school, go to work, or kind of take?
Well, actually, when I came back, I was still in the military. And I got my base of choice, which was Westover Air Force Base. They let me come back, and the reason I got it because it was a SAC base. Nobody wants to go to a SAC base in the wintertime because it's cold, and but it was close to home for me, so I put in for it, and they gave it to me, and I got lucky again there where a sergeant saw my peril standing out in the freezing cold guarding a broken down B-52. And he came out and I'm supposed to challenge him when he walks up to the post, and I just told him, come on, get in this. I had a little guard shack about 6x6 that had the heater on full blast because I've been in the tropics for 3 years. And he says, you know, come in. He says, you're supposed to challenge me. And I says, your eyes aren't slanted. No, that's not derogatory. It's just not, at the time that was, you know.
It wasn't politically correct.
It wasn't politically correct, but that was exactly what I said to him. And he laughed, and, you know, he says, what do you want to do? And I said, boy, I'd love to get back in law enforcement. He said, I'll see what I can do. Most of the guys that came back, that I remember anyways, and we got to Westover, we all got treated pretty good. Military-wise, I mean, within our own,
your own little club,
our own people, and being, you know, in the military police or the air police, they treated the guys that came back from Nam, I thought, pretty decently. And when I got, you know, can I request to go back to something? And he said, let me see what I can do. And I reported for duty the next day, and he sent me right over to base police. He said, go get your white hat and go to work.
Oh.
So I was happy again, because that was kind of where I wanted to go in my career.
Okay.
And so that's where I went, and I ended up staying in law enforcement until my discharge in September of the following year, '68.
Okay. And then after that, did you get into law
enforcement
again? After the war. Now,
right.
Excuse me, I'm going to cut it so we don't forget it. But between then and, if you will, today, I imagine you spied some gal who wanted to share her life with you, and did you get married and all that good stuff?
I sure did, and that was the woman who met me at the airport and with my sister, and her name was Kathy, and we were married that following spring. I came home in September, and we got married in May.
Good.
And we have 2 full-grown children now. And
one each, or
yeah, one boy.
All the same kind?
No, one boy.
Same.
First, and then a girl. My daughter is now married with 2 children in Rhode Island, and my son is now married with 2 children in Pennsylvania.
Now, why did they say it that way? Married with 2 children. Didn't you have a wife? The wife never seems to get in that.
Yeah, you're right. They both. She's got a husband.
Yeah, she's got a husband.
And he's got a wife.
Good guy. Okay. Now, these words sometimes they kind of get me a little bit confused. But now, what have you done since getting out of the service?
Well, the first thing when I came home, I had to get a job, and I ended up getting my first job was in security for General Electric. Got hired pretty much right out of the service for that. Maybe a few months. I went to work in a gas station for a little while until something opened up.
Okay.
And I got that job at the GE. In the interim, I had taken my exam. I tried to take an exam. The civil service was frozen, so I couldn't take an exam for the police department.
Oh, you mean Pittsfield Police?
Right, Pittsfield Police. It's a civil service.
Or state?
Yeah. So there were all these tests. They weren't available. They weren't the Dalton Police Department had an opening for a police officer for provisional, so I ended up going there, and they accepted me.
Okay.
Basically because of my military police background.
Sure.
I got that job without having to take the test right away. Got it under the.
Your grandfather?
Yeah, well, you still can take. Had to go to.
Oh, okay.
Had to take the test when they became available to keep the job, which I ended up doing. It was a few months later, I took the exam. I passed the exam, and got the job permanently there. I was there for about 4 years, a little longer. In the interim, took advantage of GI Bill.
Good.
Getting my as much education as we could possibly get, and I took it in criminal justice and law enforcement. After 4 or 5 years on the Dalton Police Department, I then transferred to the Pittsfield Police Department, and I spent another 12 years there, I believe, before I got the entrepreneurial bug and got into the electronic security business. And then I left.
That's what you're doing now.
That's what I'm just retiring from that now. I did that for 30 years. And actually, I'm now back on the police force as the director for the Auxiliary Reserve Unit.
Oh, okay.
So I've kind of come full circle.
You're back in full circle.
Yeah, what
back
I
in
used to get paid for, I'm doing for nothing now.
Yeah, it's not for nothing. You're getting a kick out of it, I would imagine.
I am.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, your schooling as such, was it BCC or UMass or something like that?
BCC, Westfield State College.
Okay.
Yeah.
We used to call the highway school system.
Yeah, Westfield that's what it was.
I know.
Route 20.
Yeah, Route 20 by and large. Well, with all of these things we're talking about, what, if you will, impact, good or bad, do you think your service life has given you as letting you do what you're doing now? Was it positive or negative?
More positive than anything. First off, as we can relate back to when we were young men, you go in there as a boy, and you come out, especially if you've gone through a war, through combat, you mature a little quicker than maybe the average 19, 20-year-old. And you come home maybe a little more cynical, or at least a little, and definitely much more mature. I noticed that not as much in myself as I noticed it in my son when he came back from the Gulf. He went in the Marine Corps a boy, and when he came back from the Gulf War, he was a man.
Yeah. Knocks the edges off real quick.
Yep. If you're, I always think if you always have a good foundation going into the military, they will strengthen that foundation and build a good house for you. And that's really what it did. It's the military gave me that. They gave me more structure than I think I had. I was kind of, I wouldn't have made a lousy student going to school at that time.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good
really
point.
Lousy.
I won't say you were hunting, but there was nothing that really grabbed you. Then you get all of a sudden, hey, the light goes on. This is what I want to do. Yeah, and you were lucky to do it.
That's what happened, and even more so with my son. He found his niche in the military. He didn't stay there, but he was there for 4 years and excelled very well. And once he got out, got involved in the federal law enforcement program, and that's what he's doing today.
FBI?
Actually works for the U.S. Forestry Department. He's a special agent for U.S. Forestry and law enforcement.
Good, good. Yeah. So you're talking about your granddad, your grad, now you, and then your son, and little Smurf Jr. is going to be
my son wants him to be a doctor.
Hey, somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
Now, what I guess say words of wisdom, getting back in the same thing, would you want to share with some of the people, or pass on some of your thoughts as to the good and the bad about the military and what it can or cannot do for people today?
Oh, boy.
It's not a loaded question. It's
I know.
Look at life.
I can only look at how it's affected myself and my family.
Okay.
That's
all you got to work with.
Very beneficial, I should say, for myself. I know it was for my dad. He was a military policeman in there too, so it's kind of like a 3-generation thing. And I saw what it's done for my son, and discipline, and character, and just being focused on what you decide what you're going to finally do for life, and responsible. That's what I can say about my son, is that he was about the most irresponsible kid at 17, and today probably the most responsible young man that I could talk to right now. Yeah. Very responsible and very successful.
Yeah. That's the good part.
Yeah.
He got some good genes, and he's going to...
I hope so, yeah. Got him from his mother.
Yeah. Well, they had to come to somebody, But one of the themes that I seem to sense from the guys that were before you, that in answer to that silly question, but it's just a deep one, is that you really all of a sudden have a respect for life. You recognize that there's a purpose, there's something you've got to do. If you can find it, great. But if you still hide and go seek, it makes for a long, long walk.
Yeah, I think, there's a point in time where you, I know I had a few little incidences over in Vietnam where after 3 or 4 times when you probably should have been dead, and you walk back out of it, and then I have to admit, I came home from Vietnam with probably a little chip on my shoulder, about the size of a redwood.
Oh, small sequoia.
Yeah, some things, like you say, you're not proud of, but at the same time, I had that, I really felt almost invincible to a certain extent.
You have to.
Yeah, and it really wasn't John Wayne syndrome. It was just the idea that, I survived this.
Yeah.
Don't mess with me, and you get over it pretty quick. But at the same time, it was there.
It's a sobering thing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
I realized that I was probably vulnerable I don't know, I was like 34, 35 years old. It's on the police force and gotten so many. I was in a couple high-speed chases, and one night I just realized, God, I could get killed doing this.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those rude awakenings that it should have came a lot sooner, but.
But at least it was recognized. Now, did that in any way, quote, slow you down, or you just be a little bit
it probably
smarter?
did. Actually, after it was a few years later after that I resigned from the police force and did the security stint and started the business. But that was basically because I just had the bug to go for the American dream and
do it.
And do it. And if I had something to fall back on if I didn't. And I was fortunate enough to have a wife that was a registered nurse and could support me. I could be a kept man if I wanted to be. But
yeah, I was scared to have kept him being lazy. Oh, gosh. No, getting into your business, I don't care about bank accounts, but is it something you really feel that you can do and do it well? You're entrepreneurial, if you will, but
well, I can say that, yes, because it's 30 years later, and it's a successful business.
Good.
It pays the bills and supports us and lets us do the things we want to do, and that's pretty much, I never planned on being a Donald Trump by any means, but at the same time, it's they say pays the bills and we can do what we want to do.
Good. Very good.
And that's almost over too.
Have you ever joined any of the Legion, the VFW?
I'm a member of the VFW and the Legions and Vietnam Veterans Associations and that type of thing. Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Not as active as I'd like to be. I'm part of the disabled vets also, and that was an injury I sustained prior to Vietnam, actually, that turned into arthritis and that type of things, but had nothing to do with Vietnam or being injured there.
No. So you're alive and well.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Just like arthritis, like probably you've got some too.
It's not that I have it, it's getting up and down that hurts. Okay. Well, we don't have any little souvenirs and stuff to show, but I'd like to, in behalf of the guys around here, we've joked about before we get here, to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
For coming, for talking, and for helping us, and for what you did. As they say, press the flesh. You still got a good, strong head. So
God bless.
I'll never be the same. Okay. Well, that kind of wraps it up, folks. But I'd like to take a couple of moments. I don't want to use Bill's time, but we're still trying to get the people in and around the county, GIs, guys and gals, to come and share their stories. We were talking about this before the program started. There are a lot of stories out there, and the bad part about it is, if you don't tell your story, nobody else will. Not being macabre and so forth, but it's something that we should do and we want to do, and with your help, we'll try and have a good record of what you did and why you did it. And Bill and all the others, we can only say thank you, but there's a lot of feeling that goes between those two words, thank and you, okay? So if you can, if you will, get a hold of me. Bob Stevens, you know where I hide. You're more than welcome, and we'll do anything within reason to make sure that you are properly served. Again, we thank you for watching. Be good, be kind, keep healthy. Thank you.